It was a quiet Tuesday night, the kind of night when the weight of loneliness presses in, and you feel like you're the only person awake in the world. My apartment was still and dark, save for the faint glow of my computer screen. I had spent hours lurking in forums on the dark web, reading conspiracy theories and secrets, hoping to stumble upon something more exciting than half-baked tales of government cover-ups. But as the hours dragged on, nothing piqued my interest. Just as I was about to log off, a new thread appeared in one of the more obscure forums I frequented. It was titled, Project Seraphim, the alien files the CIA doesn't want you to see. My heart raced as I clicked on it. The post was brief, containing a single link and a warning. This is a classified CIA document that has never been made public. If you value your sanity and your life, don't read it. I hesitated. My logical brain screamed to close the window, to leave it alone, but curiosity gnawed at me. Was it a hoax, a prank, or worse, something real? Against my better judgment, I clicked the link. It took me to a download page on a site I'd never seen before. The page was bare, save for a file labeled projectseraphim.x. I downloaded it and opened the document. What I saw made my blood run cold. The document was stamped with the official CIA seal, and it was dated 1967. The first few pages were dry and technical, filled with jargon about interstellar phenomena, unidentified aerial objects, and data from satellites. But as I read further, the tone shifted. The words felt darker, more frantic. I could almost hear the fear in the writer's voice as they described the Seraphim. According to the document, the Seraphim weren't like the Greys or other alien species often described in popular culture. They were something else entirely. Ancient, malevolent beings from beyond our galaxy. The document claimed that these entities didn't just visit Earth. They had been here for centuries, lurking in the shadows, manipulating events, and feeding off human fear. I scrolled down, feeling more uneasy with each passing line. Diagrams and photos filled the page, blurry images of strange, elongated figures hovering in the sky, and more disturbingly, people. They were ordinary people, men, women, children, all with blank, hollow eyes. The document claimed these were humans who had been touched by the Seraphim, their minds shattered, their bodies mere puppets. The next section detailed something called Project Seraphim, a top-secret CIA initiative formed to communicate with these entities. At first, the project was exploratory, an attempt to learn more about them, but it quickly spiraled out of control. The Seraphim had made contact, not through words, but through visions and nightmares. The agents working on the project began to experience horrific hallucinations, visions of a dying Earth, of humanity enslaved by unseen forces. Some agents disappeared, while others were found babbling incoherently, their minds shattered beyond repair. Those who survived reported seeing something dark and incomprehensible in the night, something that watched them from the corners of their vision. As I read on, I began to feel strange. My apartment seemed darker, the shadows thicker. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. But I told myself it was just the story getting to me. After all, it was late, and I'd spent hours reading horror stories online. The final pages of the document were the worst. They contained transcripts of conversations between CIA agents and people who had been touched by the Seraphim. The victims described waking up in the middle of the night, paralyzed, with shadowy figures standing at the foot of their beds. These figures would lean down, their faces mere inches from the victim's own, and whisper things, terrible things, into their minds. The victims couldn't remember what was said, but they were left with an overwhelming sense of dread, as though they had glimpsed something far beyond human comprehension. The document ended with a chilling note. Project Seraphim was officially terminated in 1973. All surviving agents were either institutionalized or went missing shortly thereafter. The Seraphim remain an unresolved threat. Their motives are unknown, but their influence on humanity is undeniable. They are still here. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. My apartment was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of my computer. I felt like something was just outside my field of vision, lurking in the darkness. I slammed the laptop shut and tried to shake the feeling, but it clung to me like a cold, damp fog. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of my apartment, every flicker of a shadow made my pulse quicken. By dawn, I convinced myself it was just a creepy document, nothing more. Maybe it was an elaborate prank or some kind of psychological experiment. But then, strange things started happening. It began with the dreams. Nightmares, really. Every night, I'd wake up drenched in sweat, with vivid memories of shadowy figures standing at the foot of my bed, whispering to me in a language I couldn't understand. The dreams felt so real, too real, and during the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even when I was alone. I started noticing glitches in my apartment. The lights would flicker, the temperature would drop suddenly, and there were moments when I swore I saw something move in the corner of my eye, only to turn and find nothing there. One evening, about a week after reading the document, I was sitting at my desk when my computer suddenly turned on by itself. The screen was black, except for a single line of text. "You shouldn't have read that." I froze, my blood turning to ice. I hadn't touched my computer. No one else had access to it. I tried to shut it off, but the screen flickered again. A new message appeared. "They're coming for you." The lights in my apartment flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness before sputtering back to life. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood up, backing away from the desk. But before I could reach the door, I felt it, a presence. Something was behind me. I turned slowly, and there, standing in the doorway, was a tall, shadowy figure. Its form was distorted, like a silhouette flickering in and out of existence. I couldn't make out its face, but I knew it was looking at me, watching me. The air grew cold, and I felt something press into my mind. A deep, gnawing sense of dread that I couldn't shake. It whispered to me, though I couldn't understand the words, but I didn't need to. I knew what it wanted. It was here for me. I stumbled back, crashing into the desk, knocking over my chair. My vision blurred as the figure drew closer, its form looming over me, its whispering growing louder, more insistent. My head pounded, and I felt like my mind was being torn apart. In a last desperate act, I bolted for the door, flinging it open and running out into the hallway. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just ran. But deep down, I knew it was too late. I had seen the seraphim, and now they had seen me.
Late one Saturday night, after a few drinks and a string of failed horror movie binges, I found myself bored and restless. The thrill of fear had always been my secret indulgence, but lately, nothing seemed to scratch the itch. I had heard whispers about the dark web, the forbidden corners of the internet where secrets hid, where people said the truth of the world lurked, buried beneath layers of encryption. That night, my curiosity got the better of me. I used Tor to access the dark web, my hands trembling slightly as I navigated the maze of bizarre forums and cryptic marketplaces. Most of what I found was nonsense, pirated media, dubious drug markets, and laughable conspiracy theories. But as I delved deeper, I stumbled upon something different. The website had no name, no flashy interface, just a simple black screen with a blinking cursor and the words, "Enter your query." Without thinking, I typed, "Alien CIA files." The screen went blank for a few seconds and I thought it had crashed. But then, a line of text appeared. "Accessing Obsidian Archive." My heart began to race as the website loaded. What appeared next was an extensive list of file names and dates, each stamped with the emblem of the CIA. Some of the files were redacted, their titles blacked out, while others were visible but carried ominous warnings like "highly classified" and "Project Code Black." There was one that stood out to me, a file titled "The Obsidian Archive, 1954 Incident." I clicked on it. The document that appeared was heavily redacted with entire paragraphs blacked out. But what remained readable was enough to send a chill through my spine. It was a report detailing a covert CIA operation to retrieve an unidentified object that had crash-landed in the Black Hills of South Dakota in 1954. The file didn't call it a UFO explicitly, but the descriptions made it clear. The object wasn't made of any known material on Earth. It was described as black as obsidian, with no visible seams or markings, and its surface emitted a faint, eerie hum when touched. The file went on to say that the object was taken to a classified location for study, codenamed Facility 47. What disturbed me the most wasn't the object itself, but what came after. The report detailed the retrieval team's initial observations. Every scientist and military personnel who entered the chamber where the object was kept experienced vivid, horrifying hallucinations. Some reported seeing dark figures standing at the edges of their vision, watching them. Others spoke of hearing voices, low, guttural whispers that they couldn't quite understand but felt deep within their minds. Then, people began disappearing. The file said that over the course of 3 weeks, 5 members of the research team vanished without a trace. No bodies were ever recovered. The document abruptly ended with a terse note. Project Obsidian has been classified beyond top secret. Any further discussion of this event or related materials will result in immediate termination. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow. I could feel the weight of the silence in my apartment pressing in on me, but despite my fear, I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know more. I scrolled down the page, but before I could click on any more files, my screen flickered. The dark web browser suddenly closed itself, and a window popped up. Warning: you are accessing restricted information. Your IP has been logged. Disconnect immediately. I felt a lump rise in my throat. My fingers hovered over the mouse, unsure of what to do. Before I could react, the screen flashed again. This time, it was a live video feed. It was my own apartment. The camera was facing my living room, showing me sitting at my desk in real time. My mouth went dry, and I spun around, half expecting to see someone standing there with a camera. But the room was empty. I turned back to the screen. The feed zoomed in on me, closer and closer, until the camera focused on my face. I could see every detail of my terrified expression, the beads of sweat forming on my forehead. Then, the video cut out, replaced by a single line of text. "You shouldn't have looked." The screen went black. For a moment, I just sat there, paralyzed, my mind racing. Had I been hacked? Was this some kind of twisted prank? I disconnected from the dark web, shut down my computer, and stood up. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but I forced myself to breathe, to try and rationalize what had just happened. But deep down, I knew something was very, very wrong. The rest of the night was a blur. I double-checked the locks on my doors, pulled all the blinds shut, and stayed up, clutching my phone, waiting for something. I don't know what I expected. Maybe the police, maybe some shadowy government agents, but nothing happened. By dawn, I had almost convinced myself that it was all just a bad joke.
But then the nightmares began. That night, I dreamt of a black, featureless void stretching out for miles. In the center of the void stood the object from the file, the obsidian sphere. I could hear that low, insidious hum coming from it, vibrating in my skull. Dark figures stood in the distance, their forms barely visible, but I could feel them watching me. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. In the dream, the sphere opened. Inside there were eyes, thousands of them, staring back at me, unblinking and filled with malice. A voice echoed through the void, not in words, but in feelings. Terror, hopelessness, despair. I felt it seep into my bones, like I was drowning in it. I woke up gasping for air, my sheets soaked in sweat. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I passed by a window, I felt eyes on me, unseen, but always there. My phone would randomly turn on by itself, displaying cryptic messages like, "They see you," or "You can't hide." No matter how many times I reset it, the messages would return. I tried telling myself it was all in my head, but the hallucinations grew worse. In the middle of the night, I would wake up to see shadowy figures standing at the foot of my bed, their shapes just out of focus. They didn't move, didn't speak, they just watched. And then, the disappearances started. It began with a colleague at work, someone I barely knew but often saw in passing. One day he was there, the next gone. No one spoke about it. His desk was cleared out as though he had never existed. Then it was my neighbor, an old woman I'd nod to in the hallways. Her apartment was suddenly vacant, with no signs that she'd ever lived there. I went to the police, but they looked at me like I was insane. No reports of missing people. No one knew the names I mentioned. It was as though reality itself was unraveling around me. Now, I don't sleep anymore. I can't. The shadows are always there, watching, waiting. Every night, I hear that same low hum from my dreams, vibrating through the walls of my apartment. I know it's only a matter of time before they come for me. I don't know what I found in that file, but it's out there, watching from the dark corners of the world. The Obsidian Archive isn't just a document. It's a doorway to something far worse. And once you've seen it, you can never unsee it. They're coming for me, and soon they'll come for you.
The Revelation Room. It began like any other late-night browsing session. Boredom had driven me back to the dark web, where I'd become something of an armchair explorer. I wasn't searching for drugs or illegal services, nothing so mundane. My thrill came from diving into the strange, the unexplained, and the rumored secrets lurking in the shadowy corners of the web. Conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, and black market files. You name it, I'd probably read it. But one night, I stumbled across something different, something that felt real. It was buried in a forgotten forum, one that hadn't seen much activity in years. The post was simple, titled, "The Revelation Room, Forbidden Files." It had no comments, no upvotes, nothing to suggest it was special, but the content was intriguing. A single sentence read, "Access to the truth is a heavy burden. You must be willing to carry it. Click here." There was a link attached, leading to a plain download page. A large file sat waiting, ominously labeled Revelation Room CIA.xx. My curiosity surged. Could this be another hoax? A prank by some conspiracy theorist with too much time on their hands? Maybe, but I downloaded it anyway. As soon as I opened the file, I knew this was no joke. The first page displayed a warning, stamped with the unmistakable seal of the CIA. Classified, Level Omega. Unauthorized access is punishable by death. Below that, in bold red letters, this document pertains to Project Revelation. If you are reading this, you are already in danger. I sat back, my pulse quickening. I'd read plenty of files like this before, most of them fakes, but something about this one felt different. The tone was clinical, devoid of the wild hysteria that characterized most conspiracy theories. I scrolled down, unable to stop myself. The document detailed something called Project Revelation, a top-secret CIA program launched in 1979. Its purpose, to investigate alien life forms that had been making contact with Earth for millennia. These weren't the UFO sightings or abduction stories we'd all heard about. This was something far deeper, far more insidious. The aliens, according to the file, weren't visitors from another planet. They were interdimensional entities, beings who existed outside of our perception of time and space. They weren't just watching us, they were actively influencing us, steering the course of human history from behind the scenes. The file explained that the CIA had established a hidden facility known only as the Revelation Room, a place where they conducted experiments to communicate with these entities. The room was said to be located in a remote underground bunker, somewhere in the Nevada desert, its exact coordinates redacted from the document. Inside, there were no lights, no windows, no furniture, just a single chair bolted to the floor, surrounded by a series of mirrors. The mirrors, the document said, were not ordinary mirrors. They were created from a material unlike anything on Earth, capable of reflecting not just the physical world, but the otherworldly presence of these beings. The mirrors allowed the agents to see the entities, glimpses of them just out of the corner of their eyes. But the Revelation Room wasn't just for seeing the entities. It was for something far more dangerous. The document described a horrific procedure used to open one's mind to the entity's influence. Agents would sit in the chair, isolated in the dark, their eyes forced to stay open while they gazed into the mirrors. Over time, the entities would begin to communicate through whispers, flashes of images, and sensations that bypass normal human understanding. The file referred to this process as the revelation, a mental unshackling that could only be endured by a few. Those who succeeded would gain knowledge beyond human comprehension, a true understanding of the universe's nature and the entity's plans for our world. But those who failed were driven mad, lost forever to the entities, their minds broken and twisted into something unrecognizable. The file included transcripts from the few agents who had survived the process. Their words were fractured, disjointed, filled with terror and awe. One of the agents, identified only as Subject 4, had described seeing towering, shadowy figures standing behind the mirrors, watching him with cold, calculating eyes. He claimed they spoke to him, not in words, but in emotions, overwhelming waves of dread and despair. Another agent, Subject 7, reported that the entities were not individuals but parts of a collective mind, a vast consciousness that spanned dimensions. They had been here long before humanity and would remain long after. Subject 7's final entry was cut off mid-sentence, but what remained sent chills down my spine. They are already inside us. They are us. The file went on to explain that after a series of disastrous experiments, Project Revelation was shut down, but it didn't stop there. The final section of the document detailed a warning. The entities had left a mark on the minds of those who had participated in the project. They could never truly be free of their influence. The more you knew about them, the more you became aware of their presence, the more they would start to notice you. As I read that final line, a sinking feeling settled in my gut. My room, which had felt so familiar moments ago, now felt foreign. The shadows seemed deeper, darker. The air itself felt wrong. Suddenly, my computer screen flickered. My cursor moved on its own, as if someone else was controlling it. The document closed itself, and a new window popped up, a live video feed. It was me. The feed showed my room, the same desk, the same dim lighting, but something was off. In the corner of the screen, just out of frame, I could see movement, a figure, black and indistinct, lurking just beyond the camera's view. My breath caught in my throat. The figure didn't move. It just watched. The feed zoomed in on my face, and I saw the terror reflected in my own eyes. Then, a line of text appeared over the video. They know you've seen them. The screen went black. I sat there frozen, my mind racing. I reached for my phone to call someone, anyone, but before I could dial, it vibrated in my hand. A new message had appeared, from an unknown number. Don't look in the mirror. My blood ran cold. I glanced across the room. There, on the far wall, was a mirror. I hadn't noticed it before. It was old, dusty, the kind you'd find in a thrift store, but now it felt wrong. The surface of the glass seemed to ripple, like something was moving behind it. I couldn't resist. My legs moved on their own, carrying me closer to the mirror. The air around me seemed to hum, just like in the Revelation room. My hand trembled as I reached out, fingertips brushing the cold glass. In the reflection, I saw it, behind me, a tall, shadowy figure, its eyes glowing faintly from the darkness. It wasn't just watching anymore. It was here in the room with me. The whispers began then, low and insistent, burrowing into my mind. I tried to pull away, but my reflection didn't move. It stood there, staring at me, even as I stepped back. Its lips curled into a smile. I turned and ran, but deep down I knew the truth. I had seen the entities, and now they had seen me. There was no escaping the Revelation room, and soon they would make me see everything.